friends, thank you so much for tuning in. Thank you for joining. Thank you for tuning in. And I'm your host for today's show, Alka Sharma on Ask the Experts with Alka. And before I introduce my phenomenal guest, Saria Rino, a little bit about how did my podcast journey begin? What inspired me? So, the core of my being is empowerment. I love to empower women and I love to. Why women? Because we are underrated. Women are seen but not heard. And throughout my journey, when I started my business in the health and fitness space, in the past 6 years, I helped my clients to really gain the strength, not only physically but mentally. And before I talk to Saria about what it takes to be because it all starts with your mindset, and even the financial industry that she's in, she's going to talk more to you about that, but it starts with our mindset. And my clients throughout their fitness journey got tremendous results, and for me that was so gratifying to see that. And so I've had a lot of wins in my life, but I've had a lot of failures too. And I believe that it's in the failures that we become the person that we are becoming. So this is how my podcast journey began. And on the show, I've had tremendous, amazing, phenomenal guests who inspire me. And as entrepreneurs, we are constant. We are learning from everyone. And I'm learning. Someone who's younger to me, someone who's older to me. I have an open mind to learn. It doesn't matter who you are, what age you are. You want to learn, and I've got that hunger to learn. So if you got that hunger to learn, my guest today, the amazing and talented Saria Rino. Saria is a licensed financial coach who takes a holistic approach to financial planning. She has been in the financial industry for the past 6 years, and she specializes in helping families build generational wealth. Saria believes that anyone can achieve financial and achieve the wealth they desire. And Saria is on a mission to create more financial independent individual. So Saria, welcome to the show. So good to see you.
Thank you, Alka. I'm so excited to be here. Thanks for having me.
You're very welcome. And you know what? The reason why I wanted to have you on the show, because I've been watching you and you are just making strides. You are just absolutely doing phenomenal as to what you are doing in your industry. And I know you, but for the viewers who don't know you, what is your backstory? And how did your journey begin in the financial space?
This can be like a fully loaded question.
That's okay. Go ahead. The
First,
floor is yours.
let's talk about when I was a kid. So, like, I always wanted to be an entrepreneur. I always loved business. I always like envied business people when I was a kid. They looked so pretty and they talked so fancy and they always dressed so beautiful. And I was like, how could I ever be one of those people? And when you go to school teaches you to learn in one way, and I didn't learn in that traditional way. So I unfortunately grew up my whole life from kindergarten to grade 12, really thinking that I wasn't that smart because I didn't traditionally learn in that classroom setting. So when I started getting a job at 16, my parents are always super great. Typically, when you enter the money world, you usually learn money habits from your parents. So thankfully, my parents were pretty good with money, and they usually taught me, how to be good with my money. Now, they never gave me any handouts, which, I was born in Grand Prairie, Alberta, Canada, and for people who don't know where that is, for one, it's super cold, but two, almost everyone gets like everything handed to them. So like for me to be like that one alien in my group that's like, wow, you actually have to like buy a vehicle, you got to do all the things. reason I'm telling you this is once I became 16 and started working, my parents took me to their financial advisor at the bank and was like, okay, you're getting a paycheck now. You need to put money away into these mutual funds so that you can grow your money and buy a vehicle and eventually your own place and, do all the things. So I was like, okay, sounds good. I was super excited because, my parents, I know that they have, they've had a pretty good life for themselves. They've been good with their money. And I was like, this is great. This is going to be like the start of me getting my life together. And when I went to the advisor, whatever room office, I remember the advisor just talking to me, or sorry, not to me, at me. I didn't understand anything that she was saying. And moral of the story is once we left that office, my feelings of like excitement and like, really excited to start this journey really turned into like defeat and just kind of like confusion. And I left there with more questions than I had going into it. And I just, at the end of the day, I just didn't really know what the heck was going on. I was like, okay, cool. I've got this money going into this investment every week or biweekly, whatever it was. But the one thing that you did show me was in 40 years, I'd have X amount of dollars. And I think it was only like 40,000, which
Right.
wasn't a whole lot, but when you're 16, 40,000 is like a lot of money. I
It's
didn't
a lot
never
of
had
money. Yeah,
$40,000
that's right.
before. um, so what I learned was, most people don't really know what's going on with their money, let alone actually like understanding it. So as I grew up, I realized that not just people in their 16 or 20 or 30s, didn't really have a plan with their money, but I noticed that most importantly, when they were 40 or 50 or sometimes even 60, people didn't really have a full plan, or they didn't really have somebody there actually helping them and guiding them. Their situation was similar to mine where they were working with someone, but they didn't know what was going on. They didn't know if it was right. And really, they didn't even know if maybe they could retire one day. So, I just kind of thought that was a really great opportunity to help people because I always wanted to help people in a large way. And, we all use money. Everything that we do involves money. So when we actually know what's going on with our finances, it's actually super empowering. So that is kind of how I got into the industry.
Exactly. And you know what? We need to be in that driver's seat. And like I said, we need to be in control. And especially women, you like your group basically is around women. And I think, you know what, helping women need to understand as to what's happening because a lot of women don't know. They don't know as to what is happening. The husband maybe doesn't share, the partner doesn't share. So how do they know as to what they need to do?
Yeah.
And I love that. So you were 16 when you were taught at the bank that, the advisor walked through with you as to what is expected. And I feel that, when it comes to financial literacy, it's huge. It's
Hmm.
huge. And a lot of people, if they're not financially literate, they can be at a loss. What would you say to that to people that are listening? You're at a
Yeah.
loss. What do you do if you do find yourself in that situation? What can someone do?
Well, it can be tough sometimes because, like, first of all, great question, Alka. Love this. There's so much information on the internet, but it's also kind of a curse because there's so much information. If you don't actually have the right knowledge, like me, you go to school, you kind of learn wrong from right. There's so much information that how do you actually like a normal person who's never had a financial background, how do you actually sift through it and know what's, just blowing smoke up your
That's
tail
true.
because they want to
Yes.
sell you a product? And
Yeah.
as much as I love the financial industry, there's a lot of stuff that are out there just because they want to sell you a product, but it's not actually going to benefit you. It benefits the other person more. So the biggest thing is, if you can read, obviously that's going to help you, but it's like, well, what do you read? So if you know somebody who is like an advisor, specifically one that's like independent, who's not working with a bank, who works, independently, they'll give you non-jaded advice, kind of like myself, because I'm not trying to sell a certain person's product and services, but even just learning about like, okay, how do you budget your expenses? Should you invest in a mutual fund or a stock? Like there's so many information out there. But if you can actually like join a group of like women of like-minded people, that also helps as well. But at the end of the day, even though there's so much information online, it's better to read something and at least have some knowledge. And sometimes you can also make like your own judgment to be like, okay, well maybe that seems right, maybe it's not. And then at least if you have a little bit of knowledge, like in the back of your mind, and you go sit with somebody, you can at least ask them questions and be like, hey, I read this. What's your thoughts of this? And it actually will help you have a better relationship with your advisor, because now they know that you're serious with your finances because you're asking questions, you're engaging in the conversation, you want to know more. Then this way, it also helps you feel like you have a little bit of knowledge going in there, because now you're not just waiting for someone to tell you what to do and just hoping that what they're telling you is right, but you actually have a little bit of knowledge being like, oh, well, I read up this could be, good or bad in this term, and maybe this works this way. And then this could also be a great opportunity to learn about, if you're going to be working with this person, what are their values? What do they what do they think of maybe what you've read? Hopefully that helps.
Exactly. So asking hard questions. And I
Yeah.
think the more that we ask hard questions, the better, we are able to not only for ourselves understand, okay, what the advisor is going to tell or the broker is going to tell you.
Yeah.
So if you ask those hard questions, then you are better prepared and you know what, is going to be expected of you.
Yeah.
So asking those hard questions, and I think that's also very important. And Grant also likes to, talk about that you need to know the language, know the lingo.
Yes.
So if you go to the bank, be prepared. If you're, talking to an investor, if you're talking to a broker, if you're talking to a financial advisor or a planner, you
Mm-hmm.
need to know the language.
Yeah.
So how important is knowing the language? How important is it to prepare, oneself before they go to a bank or to any financial institution to learn about money management? How important is knowing the language and to be prepared? This is a two-part question. How important is to prepare yourself before you sit in front of a financial planner or a mortgage broker or a financial broker?
Yeah, well, it's pretty important, because it's like, let's just say you go to Europe and you don't know how to speak the language. Well, it's going to be really hard for you to get around. Same thing in the financial industry. Now, you can also be really lucky and work with someone who's going to guide you. Like for myself, I take an educational approach to finances. So I'm going to teach my clients a little bit more about finances before we actually get in the nuts and bolts and actually invest their money, because I know what it felt like to not know what's going on. And the last thing I want for my clients to feel like is like, okay, I'm working with this girl, but I have no idea what's going on. I don't even know if she's doing what's right for me. But one thing that I'll say in my own experience is kind of the answer to your question is, I've been in the industry for over 5 years now, and I've even sat in banks or different financial conversations, and they don't know what I do. I usually keep that a secret just to see what people will actually like offer me, because I know that they're going to offer me things, like I said previously, what's mainly beneficial to them, not always
Right.
me. And
Yeah.
especially because I'm a female, going back to why it's so important for females to know this. As much as I hate to say this, people will take advantage of females because we're females, right? So getting financially illiterate, through financial literacy is very, very important, because you very well can be taken advantage. So moral of that is, yeah, there's been times where I've sat with people and they've tried to sell me products that aren't right or doesn't make sense for me, or just because I caught on some of the lingo, maybe I didn't need to know everything, but I knew what, like, certain words were. I could put it together and I was like, well, that's not actually what I'm asking. What I want is this, and it sounds like you're offering me that. You know what I
Right.
mean? And then
Yeah.
that also kind of gives you some credibility, and then I feel like it lets the whoever that you're speaking to across from you know that maybe you're a little bit smarter than you think, and maybe they can't just boss you
Exactly.
around a little bit.
Don't take advantage.
Yeah. And one thing I'll also say, Alka, is I actively grow a team in my business, and just like anytime you grow a team, some people stay, some people don't. But the greatest thing is, um, you have to take your mutual fund and your life insurance license to get licensed, right? And I have some clients of mine that will actually just join my business to go through the courses. And the reason for that is, well, for one, I'll say there's two reasons. The first is my company pays for pretty much all your schooling, which is really great because you can take these courses outside of the company, but sometimes they can be 3 to 5 grand or sometimes more. It just kind of depends where you're going.
Yeah.
But there's been a lot of clients or even some of my agents who no longer work with me, and they're like, just the information I learned from these courses about, how mutual fund works, the different kinds of insurances, why you want insurance, how they actually work. Like there's so much that comes to all of that. They're like, I'm going to be able to make better financial decisions, not just for myself, but for the people around me and my generations to come if I choose to have a family or if you already have a family. So yes, I think that becoming not a master, you don't need to be a master, but just learning more about finances is just like it's going to do you so it's you'll get more money, you'll be able to acquire more wealth, just like they say people who work with financial advisors or a financial professional, they do acquire 7 times more assets than most people or get a higher rate of return on their investments because they have a professional actually working with them. So yes, it's very important to know what's going on with your money.
Exactly. And, touching on women. And so, I mean, this is what inspires me. And for you, Saria, that's what, inspires you. And I think women, like we said, we get taken advantage of. People assume that we may not know like, what are you talking about?
Yeah.
But, it's very important. And I just want to like just sort of side gear to, now you talk about and you specialize in holistic
Hmm.
and planning, holistic financial coaching. What is holistic wealth management, and how are you different from other people in the financial space? How are you different, and what is holistic wealth management?
Yeah, I love that. That's a great question, Alka. So really the way that I approach like the holistic well-being is, for one, I never focus on just a transaction. I focus on a lifetime client relationship with
Right.
my client. So
Mhm.
I'm not going to, let's just say, market you a life policy or an investment or anything and then just like never talk to you again. It's like, let's put together a full comprehensive plan. Let's say you have debt. Let's put together a plan to get yourself out of debt and on the road to financial independence. It's all long term, it's all a long term strategy. So, unless you stay with the same person that has this goal for you, how you're going to achieve it in the next 30, 40 years or whatever, if you keep switching and not really like revisiting that, it's harder for you to actually achieve that, right? So, when it comes to the holistic side, for example, when I was saying that there's so much to know about insurance? Well, for example, there's permanent insurance and then there's something called term insurance. So, permanent insurance, I would never sell to like my worst enemy because it will always benefit the agent more than it'll ever benefit the client. And
Oh, okay.
the reason why these people sell them is because you make such a substantial commission on them. Like
Hmm.
commission I make on term insurance is not nearly as much as you'd make on the other insurance, but it's what's right for the client. So, for example, term insurance is exactly what it says. You have insurance for a certain term. Now, my agency is the only agency that has a 35-year term. So let's just say you're 25, we're going to put, a term policy on you until you go to retire 65, 70. As you work with me and as you pay off your assets, or not your assets, right? Pay off your debt and you acquire assets and you grow your assets. We always revisit your insurance needs, every year or whenever we decide to do reviews. Every client's a little bit different, but usually at least once a year, we're going to revisit that. If we feel like you need insurance later on in life, we're going to continue adding insurance. But one thing that I focus on with my clients is I want you to have insurance because the purpose of having insurance is while you're in trying to achieve financial independence. So I actually figure out how much money do you need to become financially independent. Okay, we're going to
Hmm.
put inflation into that equation. There's a lot of it that goes into it, and that number is always ever changing because as you grow, as you have a family, all that kind of stuff that changes. So we want to figure out, what do you actually need to retire financially independent? If you want to retire and never work and never run out of money, we're going to
Hmm.
figure that out. So we're going to put insurance on you in the short term so that in the event that something happens to you before you're financially independent, your family's going to get that insurance. They're going to be able to live their life. They're going to be able to breathe, not go backwards financially, take time off work, do all the things. Now, once we get you to financial independence, you don't actually have a need for life insurance. Of course, unless you want to keep it for additional legacy or inheritance money. I have some clients that want to do that, but in short term, holistic approach to that is that instead of just like producting you to death, because there's a lot of advisors that do that.
Yeah.
They want to generate you commissions, or they want to sell you multiple
Right.
policies, which I've seen a lot. I just really want to put together a strategy that helps my clients long term actually achieve their goals. So, yes, we're going to cover your two risks that everyone faces in money and finance. You're going to live too long, which means you don't have enough money, or you're going to die too soon, which means that you didn't have the money, but you also like you have insurance to cover that, right? So we're going to cover your two bookends, and then we're going to put together a long term strategy in the interim to make sure that you get there. And essentially, I'm also just not going to give you products that don't make any sense for you just for me to generate a commission, right? And I want to make sure that I do a great job for you so that that also becomes generational. You know, if you have family, you have kids, whatever, you know, obviously I'd love to work with your family, but more importantly, if something were to happen to you and that insurance had to get paid out, or, you know, this nest egg that you created, now you passed away and didn't get to use it all, or you wanted some as a legacy, well, now, you know, I'm going to be able to pass that on to your grandkids, whoever it is that you want. And then it also becomes like a family thing. So that's kind of my definition of a holistic approach to financial planning.
And you know what? And I absolutely love that. I think it's got to be a whole, not just like the one aspect, because a lot of agents, a lot of brokers, you know, they do that. They just focus on, like I said, you know, just selling you the products, but they're not looking at the whole as to what does the family need. And
Yeah.
you know, so when we talk about life insurance, because a lot of people don't, and myself included, probably don't believe that you need to have life insurance. And I know we probably talked about this, but a lot of people may not think that they need a life insurance because and now you know it is important to have life insurance because of all any eventualities, you know, the
Mm-hmm.
spouse might pass away, you
Yep.
might get a divorce. We don't know, we don't have a crystal ball as to what's going to happen in the future, let
That would
alone
be nice.
tomorrow, right?
Yeah.
So if we have life insurance, that's going to protect us, and also it's going to protect you. If someone dies and there's a death in the family, then that the siblings or anyone in the family is going to inherit the insurance. So, Sarah, the reason I brought about life insurance is because
Mhm.
women,
Yes.
and I want to touch on this because women who are watching, women who depend on, you know, certain cultures, they come to the Western world, but
Mhm.
they have the mentality like they were back home. So that is, you know, the men don't tell the women, don't tell the wives as to how much is in the bank account. They don't tell the women as to how much they're making.
Yes.
So when it comes to life insurance and say the husband passes away, what would
Mhm.
be the first step that you can advise our viewers? What is that first step someone, the wife needs to take, the woman needs to take in all eventualities that's happened? What can she do now to prepare herself and her family?
Yeah, so that's a great question. So life insurance, I like to call it the last love letter. You know, the
Okay.
two things that we can kind of like guarantee in life is taxes and death. You
Right.
know, we don't know, unfortunately, when our last day is going to be on this earth. And it's a blessing and a curse because,
And you can't get away from taxes.
yeah, exactly. Right. I mean, you become a business owner, you get tax write offs. Hopefully, you pay
Mm,
less. But yes,
mhm.
we're going to be taxed.
Taxed.
Right.
Yeah, exactly. No matter
Um,
what. Yeah.
Exactly. No, this is a really great question because let's just say your family did have insurance and now you are a single mom and you have three kids, and let's just say you even got like $1 million of a life policy that got paid out to you. Well, if I'm the agent that gave you that policy, you know, I'm going to be the agent that's going to deliver that death claim. Okay. So I'm going to sit down with you. We're going to look at everything. If you have debts, of course, we want to make sure that you're okay financially. So, like, if you're especially not like someone who works, like if you're like just the homemaker at home, which is a lot of people nowadays,
Mhm.
we want to make sure that there's enough money in there that, especially if you have a house, if you have all these payments, like there's a lot of families who kind of have a lot of I guess finances, right? Like, or sorry, they're financing a lot of things. Maybe they have a boat, maybe they have a car. Of course, you probably have a mortgage. But we want to make sure that all your ends are covered, because the last thing that you want to do when you're mourning, let's just say your loved one, is now all of a sudden you got to go backwards financially. You got to sell a car, you got to downsize your home, in the midst of everything. Now you're also changing a lot of things, right? So that's one of the purposes of life insurance is, you can't replace the person, but you can at least replace the income. So let's say your husband made 100 grand, that $1 million would provide you income for at least the next 10 years. So we would
Right.
take whatever immediate cash we needed right away. Let's say we wanted to pay off the mortgage. We wanted you to be mortgage free. We can pay off the mortgage. If you guys had any additional debt, like credit cards or anything, especially what I like to call financial cancer, like credit cards, like the really there's a word I'm trying to think of and it's not coming to me, but that's toxic debt. That's what I'm trying to look for. Any
Right.
toxic debt, of course, we're going to spearhead that first. We want to get that gone. And then, of course, one of the most important things is you want to make sure you have money for that funeral, right? So hopefully he had a will. One of the things I help my clients with as well is you need a will, 3-part living will, final will, power of attorney. You never know what's going to happen, but it's better to
Right.
have it than not need it. So you want to look at all those kind of benefits first. Make sure the kids are covered. If you need daycare in the interim or something, we want to make sure. Essentially, we're just going to see what do you actually need between now and let's just say the next 6 months, 12 months, whatever that looks. It looks different for everyone. Maybe you have some help from family. Maybe sometimes you have like I've had some clients where like their mom lives with them, so they can help with kids, but essentially we're going to look at your your immediate cash needs first. Then after that we're going to say, okay, let's just say you had 700,000 left of that $1 million, where we're going to invest that. We're going to make sure that if you're going to need to live off that right away, of course there's going to be a portion of it that's not going to be invested super aggressively so that you can live off that regardless on what's going on in the markets. You're going to be okay. But then the larger portion of that, we're going to invest that a little bit more aggressively. So that money is also growing. So
Right.
now you
So
have
it's
money.
compounding. The money's compounding.
Exactly. It's working for you. You always want your money to be working for you because if not, it's dying. And then your dollar today is not worth a dollar like it was yesterday. Right. So yeah, I mean, that's kind of like almost like an infomercial of kind of what you would do, but essentially, you want to have that money invested, you want to have it working so it's still growing. And then, we would still put together a plan going forward. If they had any other assets or any other investments, we would look to see, okay, well, what do you have now? Let's say you had 1.5 million from the life insurance and investments that were left over. That's going to last you how many years? Like, then we would kind of get down to the nitty gritty and put together an actual plan. But usually when something is fresh, like if it's a death, where we may not put together a plan right at this time because it's hard to kind of see past even like the next hour. But
Right.
the biggest thing is we just want to make sure that you're okay. You don't have to go backwards and your life doesn't have to change drastically.
So I know sometimes, the life can change, like in a blink of an eye. You
Yeah.
have money, and then now all of a sudden you don't have money.
Yeah.
And you may not have the money because, either your husband has gone into bankruptcy, the company's gone to bankrupt. Now he's a sole breadwinner, there's no money coming in.
Mhm.
So how does a family live? Like, how do you survive? I mean, I can't even fathom how can a family survive when the sole breadwinner has been told that you've been now laid off, there's no money coming in.
Yeah, it's tough. So like as much as I hate to say it, especially in today's world, I feel there should never be a need for anyone to pass away and not have life insurance, but there's a lot of people that think they're too young to have it. There's a lot of people that don't want to pay for it. There's a lot of people that don't believe in it. There's also a lot of people that, maybe they have a family, maybe they don't, but they say, once I pass away, I don't want, it's not my problem. But like I said earlier, it's your last love letter. Like, you know, it's like the last thing that your family's going to get from you, and it's like, hey, I got you. Like, I know that this is going to be tough, but like you don't have to struggle, right? I have seen the worst case scenario where people have to set up a GoFundMe account, which like I hate so much when I see that because I'm like, that could have been avoided. Like you shouldn't have to be here. None of my clients have had to do that, thankfully, but it's like I have seen the opposite where people have to sell things, they have to move in with in-laws, or they have to downsize, or like it becomes like I literally just got goosebumps as I said that. But it's crazy because you don't want that to happen, right? And
Hmm. Hmm.
when when we talk about life insurance, a lot of people don't want to talk about it because they don't want to think about dying. They don't want to think about all that
Right.
kind of stuff. But
Hmm.
I know from personal experience, obviously I'm alive here, but there's been a lot of times where I like to live life a little crazy sometimes. And I've done some, maybe some things that my mom wouldn't be super proud of, doing some scary things in cars or something, like driving too fast and like
Well, you're
literally
honest.
exactly, right? Sounds crazy, but there's been times where I'm like, at least I know I have life insurance. Like if anything were to happen to me in this moment in time, I'm like, at least I know that my family would be taken care of. And
Yeah,
I'm not saying that everyone's going to think about that on their deathbed, but like it is things that I think about when like even sometimes I'm flying or like something, maybe you're parasailing on holidays. Like you never actually know how you're going to pass, right? But that's why we take precautions, right?
exactly. And that is such a great advice because, you mentioned the GoFundMe. Like, why do they resort to the GoFundMe? And I know you said that should not ever have to be the case, but why do people have like a GoFundMe? Is that because they're in desperation? Is because, there's
Totally.
that last resort that they, where is the money? They need the money for most families, right? So
Yeah, and like it's a great, well, it's not great to say, but it's like I've seen GoFundMe accounts in different amounts. Sometimes it's 5 grand, sometimes it's 10 grand just to do the funeral or just to have some people have their bills paid while they take a month off work or something. Because one thing I always like to like bring my clients and make this a little more real is it's like sometimes people will say, oh, maybe I don't need that much insurance. It's like, listen, your family's never going to be sad if they get a bigger check than a smaller check. Like if you can afford it, term insurance is pretty cost effective. So like especially if you're young, so you can get even $500,000 or $1 million for, it really depends, even under $200. Obviously, don't take my word on it. A lot of different factors go into it. But either way, it's very inexpensive. And I know that a lot of people spend more than $200 or even around $200 on other things that maybe don't give them the same type of security. But when you do pass away, it's like, okay, people are going to have to take time off of work. You're not just going to get news that someone passes away and take a day or two off and go back to work. Like that's not going to happen. Like there's so
exactly.
much different things that happen in life. And there's taxes and there's death taxes, which sounds funny. There's lawyer fees. If you didn't have a will and maybe your beneficiaries weren't set up properly, well, like for example, people will say, well, I got money in the bank or I got an investment. Well, I've sat with people, I always give people a second opinion on their stuff because just because you have something doesn't mean it's right. And sometimes their beneficiaries aren't set up right, or they don't have a beneficiary, or their beneficiary is their estate. And you never want your beneficiary to be in your estate because your family can't access that money, especially if your estate is frozen. So you always want a beneficiary. This way, it also bypasses taxes. Um, but essentially there's just a lot more that goes into it, right? So it's like just at least protect yourself. If it was like thousands of dollars a month, obviously I would get it more, but it's
Yeah,
so cost effective nowadays that just take a little bit of time, let's plan ahead and you'll be happy that you did.
exactly. And I think that's a good point, is you need to plan because you need to plan for any eventualities. And I think the more forward that we are, more foresighted to think about as to what's going to happen. We might get laid off. We might, there could be a death in the family. The spouse is the breadwinner of the family. He might be laid off. And if we don't plan, and seek advice from professionals, how do we know that how we're going to be protected? We won't know because there's been no planning. And like you just said, you could someone in the family, it could be a death in the family. And if there's no will, Saria, that's just unfathomable that there's
Yeah.
no will.
Hmm.
And now the money does not go to the family.
Exactly.
The government takes that money because there's been no will.
Especially if you have kids. Like I just got
Mm,
goosebumps again. But like so many people say, oh well, like the kids are automatically gonna go to the husband or vice versa. And like it sucks to say this. Canada is a great country, but the one thing that we really need to change is the whole like death process. Like if you don't have a will, and especially if you have kids, the
yeah,
government has one for you. You just have zero say in it. Your kids do not go to
exactly.
who you want. And there's actually a huge chance that they could be separated. So you could have 3, 4 kids and they may not even end up in the same home. Like it just, the only reason why people fail financially is because they don't plan. It's not that you plan to fail, you just simply didn't plan, right?
Exactly. Hmm. Exactly. You just simply didn't plan. And so now I just want to talk about women, and I heard you on the call about the women in business, and I think that was such a great talk, great conversation. And what I loved about it is how women, and now that we, women who are listening, and you all, Saria is just sharing amazing knowledge nuggets right here. So I really want you to pay close attention. So, as women are now being educated, and when it comes, we talked about financial literacy is the key. It's got to be the first thing that we need to know about. It's the first thing that we start to know about only for ourselves. The knowledge and education, what's required, but also
Mhm.
then be able to pass it down to our kids. So, that conversation, women in business, how important is it for women in business?
It's super important. And I will say that women also make better like we're better at making financial decisions than men. So like there is
Yes, we
going to
are.
be women power. There's going to be this like shift where, maybe it's actually going to be the woman taking care of most of the finances in the household. And I've seen it, like this is kind of going a little off sidetrack, but if
That's
I
okay.
sit down with a couple, I always ask them, regardless on whether the husband takes care of the finances or it's, vice versa. I always ask to meet with them, together, because regardless on whatever happens, for one, I want them at least to know a little bit of what's going on. But two, in the event that something happened and one of them goes away, well, I
Yeah,
also want to have that relationship with both spouses so that I can step in and help them. And that's one of the things about going back about the holistic approach that I take is, yes, I want to have a relationship with both your spouses, your kids, your cousins, everyone, because what happens is if we go back to the life insurance, um, if your beneficiary is your spouse, or maybe if you guys both passed away and the money goes to a cousin or it goes to a brother or something, I always tell my clients, in the event that something happened, I don't want to meet your brother for the first time in these kinds of circumstances and giving him a death check. Like I want to at least know him prior, and then I want to make sure that he's set up financially so that if he's the person that ends up taking care of your kids, he's financially stable. So there's a lot of pieces that it comes to. That's why I say the holistic approach. I'm not just going to focus on you or essentially, getting one transaction from you. But I know I kind of went away from the question because sometimes I do that. But you were talking
that's
about
okay.
women in business, and what specifically were you saying about women in business, Alka?
Well, what I was saying in women in business is that, there's that women power, right?
Yeah.
The more that we know that we are in control, as we talked about, we need to be in the driver's seat, because the
Yeah.
more that we have the confidence and the knowledge when it comes to finances.
Yeah.
And as we talked about, most women don't have that. Most women are not financially educated. So that's what I'm talking about. Whole empowerment, women in business. What does it mean for a woman to be in business in 2022? So can you share with the viewers, and also when it comes to the finances?
I think one thing about being a woman in business in 2022 is, for one, anytime that you see a female in business and they're killing it, or they're doing all the things, it also gives a permission slip to other women to show that that is like you can do it as well.
Right.
Especially even if you are like a homemaker, there's so many people who are like stay-at-home moms. Even some people on my team, they're stay-at-home moms. They don't really want to do, like, maybe they don't want to work all the time, but they kind of like the idea of having something on the side or having additional income, maybe that they don't have to ask their husband for, whether they ask for it or not, that doesn't really matter. But it's nice to just know that, like, you can actually do things yourself, because historically women were always left in the dark, not even just about finances, about everything. Like we weren't able to vote for so long. Like there's so many things, and now women are really getting put into the forefront and getting put into the spotlight. And there's actually more CEO, like women CEO, like whatever I'm trying to say there, like funded companies, like women are now becoming more CEOs than men because we have leadership abilities, but we also have that natural like motherhood, right? So we
Mhm.
focus on relationships. We have that empathy with people and like
We
we have
nurturers.
exactly, we're very nurturing. And we have the ability to be very hard when we need to be, but we also have the ability to be very like personable and be able to connect with people. And nothing against males, they're obviously super great, but like males a lot of the times they don't have that. Like they're either like business mode or like, not so business mode, maybe a little bit dickish, like not trying to be rude about them. I love men obviously, but
True.
we have a way
Mhm.
of like maybe bringing a hard message across, but not making it be so hard and actually like
Right.
caring for that person more.
Exactly. As women, we can pacify over things. We
Yes.
can pacify. We are more, on that softer edge that we have, so that, it's more like indirect, but the man would not know as to like, okay, what's just happened right there, right? Because we have the knack of doing that. So we pacify. We can easily lift over that. So I think this is just amazing as to what, when we're talking about empowerment, when we talk about finances. And what also comes to mind is that, a woman should never have to be dependent. And I heard someone say, a woman should never have to be dependent, whether it's her husband, whether it's
Mm,
her father, whether it's her brother, any male figure in the family. A woman should not have to be dependent on the male figure of the family. She needs to be financially independent to be able to make those decisions, number one. Number two, be able to be financially independent when it comes to earning.
yes.
So, what are your thoughts on that?
This is a really great question, Elka, because there's a lot of stuff that I can say about this, but one of the reasons
Sure, you
why
know what? The floor is yours. So
I
take it
love
away. Take it
it.
away.
Perfect. Um, there's so much I could say about this, but like one of the reasons why I'm so passionate about women learning this and like really just taking the reins on this kind of stuff as well is because just like you said, it's very important for women to be not just financially independent, but not dependent on other people because
Right.
you hear so many stories where, females stayed in a relationship longer than they should have because they were financially dependent on that person. Or maybe it wasn't a relationship, it could be bad circumstances, it could be, staying in a place that you don't love. Or maybe it's too small for your family just because you're not sure how to make more income or how to create additional streams of income or even how to take the income that you're currently having and allocate it better. Like even when I talk about, paying off debt for clients, like this is kind of a little bit of a sidetrack, but like a lot of people will think if you pay off a bunch of different debts at once, it's going to help. It feels good because you're paying them all off, but realistically, like, working with an expert like myself is little strategies make the biggest impact with your finances. So I'm like, no, we're going to prioritize this in a certain way where we're going to focus on one debt. All that money you're putting towards debt is going to go towards one, and you're actually going to get out of debt faster and sooner, and it's going to feel more rewarding. So go like the reason why I bring that up is because sometimes people stay in like positions because maybe you had school loans or school debt, or I've even had some clients who have taken on debt because they maybe didn't get as long as maternity leave, or they had to take time off work to take care of their sick parents, and now all of a sudden they have maybe a $5,000-$10,000 line of credit or something, or credit cards or multiple credit cards. Sometimes it looks different for everyone, but now it's just like, okay, well, now how can we help you get more prepared? Just like we talked about earlier, we're superwomen, we want to do all the things, but it's super important for us to prioritize ourselves and say, okay, well, how can we just be dependent on myself? And this is something that, I've been doing in my own life. Feels really good to like become, more independent and not have to like rely on anybody else. And it's very empowering. Like you'll find as a female, when you have, even if you're not completely set up, because it takes time, everything takes time. You're never going to be like financially set up in one day or one week, but you can take the
Exactly.
steps to slowly get there, right? You're going to walk with better confidence. You're going to get better friends. Like, not that there's anything wrong with your friends, but you're going to attract better people in your life. You're going to get better job opportunities. Like, some of my clients who are females have literally gotten jobs and been able to like what's the word I'm trying to look for, negotiate like wages and stuff with their bosses, and they've been able to make 20 or 30 grand more a year, or even get a better raise or get a better position because they were able to understand their finances, and more importantly, they were able to understand the worth that they bring to the table. And I just got goosebumps when I said that again, but I think that that is so valuable when it comes to being a female. And like I said about that permission slip earlier, it just allows, like, whenever I see a very strong, like, female, just like yourself, Alka, it's very motivational and it's also very inspiring because we're traditionally, like we said, left in the dark. So it just feels nice to see other women. And that's why, like, these women in business and women, helping women communities are so vital, because like we get each other. You know what I mean? Like it is different being a woman, but I don't know, it's also just so empowering, becoming independent and doing the things for yourself. Yeah.
Exactly. And I love that point. I love the point that you made is that, when we are empowering together, when we're standing sort of shoulder to shoulder
Yeah.
and really helping and lifting each other up. And I think as women, we do that so well, but there are times when, it can get a little bit, we may not get along with everyone, but I think on the whole, is that women's empowerment. I think women in business, that's what I like. And that's what I really wanted to bring in this conversation,
Yeah.
is because women in business, that's what we mean. We mean business.
Yes.
And I think it's important that, when we begin to see that way, see the light, you know, a lot of things can change. And so, this conversation has been really very enlightening. And I think, is much needed when it comes to finances. I
Mhm.
think, in my opinion, anyway, I think it should be taught earlier on, like it's in school, being part of the school curriculum.
I agree.
Because I know for me at school, we didn't learn about financing, finances, money management, wealth management. We were not taught that. I'm not sure about you, but what do you feel? Do you think we needs to be this conversation needs to start early at
Yes.
schools in part of school curriculum?
Yeah, the thing about it is, like, as much as we know it's needed, it's probably not going to change because, like, I feel that school teaches you certain things so that you don't become this powerful woman, right? Like, you
Right.
know, essentially, this could be like a huge rabbit hole I go into, but I won't. But like, there's a lot of things that we're taught because society and different, like, corporations, like the banks and stuff, they want to help us stay where we are. They don't want to help us get ahead. But, just like you said, Elka, school didn't teach us anything that really helped me. Like I said in my story, is like school made me feel like I was dumb. Like I was just like, man, I don't get this. This is boring. Like I like science, but like I wasn't gonna go super far with science, I didn't feel.
Right. Huh.
Um, but it's like, the thing about it is, we learned algebra and like how to find x, and I would never go find my x because they're x's for a reason, but it's like that didn't actually help us, right? But you are
Yeah.
correct. Like, I do believe that we need to learn more about finances, do all the things, and that's why I always lead with education when I sit with a client, whether you're an existing client and we're doing a review, or you're a brand new client. Like, I'm always educating, because sometimes you can hear things once and it hits different, but then once you've, let's just say, grown a little bit of a portfolio where you're starting to pay off debt and maybe go through a market correction like we're going now, sometimes when you hear that information a second or a third or even a fourth time, it becomes more real for you, because you're like, oh, I get it. Like, I actually get it now. I'm living through it. I'm
Yes.
doing it. Like, I'm putting myself in play. And same thing with, like, all the information that's out there in the internet. Like, there's a lot of information, but unless you do something with that information and start applying it into your life, it's just information. So it has to be applied, and it has to be applied in a certain way. Because there's a lot of things that you could do financially that can help you, but there's also a lot of things that you can do financially that can hurt you. So I mean, yeah, you can get into finance and you can learn a little bit more about it, but I do agree that it does need to be taught more, and that's actually what fueled my fire of building a team.
Yeah.
Was when I started working with clients for 1, 2, and 3 years, and I started seeing their transformation and their testimonials and stuff. I was like, wow, this is such an incredible impact. Like, nothing can actually beat that feeling when, like, clients tell you
Right.
how they've done, or like, I've had clients pay off debt or get
Mhm.
money, and we put together a plan, and they're like, you're the first one I called because I didn't know who else I could call that would get super excited that I just paid 20 grand of debt off. Like they're like, it just feels good that I was the person that they called and we were able to celebrate together.
That's amazing. Yeah.
Yeah, super, super great. Don't really remember where I was going with that, but that's totally okay. But anyways, just finances are super important.
Exactly. Well, as I said, the floor is yours. So whatever you wanted to share, that's amazing. And I love that. But you know what? Yeah. So take care of your finances because that's the number one thing that, we never want to sort of be misguided by or finances or money management, wealth management. We always want to be constant and just be learning and educating. So, Saria, the final question, and I love this, and I ask
Yeah.
all my guests this question, and
Mm-hmm.
that is the three truths.
Mm-hmm.
So, everything that you have accomplished and that you are accomplishing, because you are just phenomenal,
Mm-hmm.
what you are doing. So, everything that you have done thus far, if today was your last day on earth, what are the
Mm-hmm.
three things people want so that you can leave, that so people can learn from you? What are those three things that you can leave behind?
Ooh, I love that. Well, first off is wealth is more than just the number. So it's not just the money that you have in the bank or the amount of money that you're achieving. It's how you take care of yourself, the health, the food that you put in, the people you surround yourself with, read, educate your mind. Like health, or sorry, not health. Wealth is so much more than just like winning the lottery or something. It's like to be truly wealthy, especially as a wealthy woman, it's like embody all the things, like really do the things that light your soul on fire because you can have, $5 million in the bank, but not be happy, right? So wealth is definitely more than just a number. Another thing would be like, just take a chance on anything that you have interest in. Like, I never thought that I would be I shouldn't say I never thought, I never believed in myself as being like a successful business owner or anything. And really, every single day, I'm still figuring out, I'm always reinventing myself and figuring out how I could do better than I was yesterday. How could I be a better leader, a better daughter, a better girlfriend, all the things. But just never stop learning and investing in yourself. And if you have something that, like, if you have that motor ticking, like for me, the motor started ticking when I was a kid. I did little entrepreneurial things as a kid, but like if you feel you have something inside of you, don't be afraid to fail because just like you said earlier, Alka, in your failures, you actually learn more about yourself. And it's true. Sometimes they suck when you're in the valleys. It absolutely sucks, but you come out of those and you learn so much about yourself. So don't be afraid to fail. And the last thing would be, just always be grateful. Like I know it sounds very like easy and whatnot, and everyone probably says that, but it's like when you just are grateful for everything you have, especially if you do be become decide I can't speak right now. But if you decide to take the journey of entrepreneurship, it's not going to be easy. And every single day, I always like beat myself up that I'm not farther than I am. I'm very happy and grateful for where I've come and all the things I've accomplished, but it's a journey, not a race, and everybody's journey looks different. And the road to success for entrepreneurial, is not a straight line as much as, people might want to tell you that, or you can make $1 million in a year or a month. Yes, you can, but it's not going to be most people. So just enjoy the ride, be grateful for everything you have, and everything will always work out in the end if you just believe in yourself and keep going.
Absolutely. Saria, thank you so much. This has just been an enlightening conversation, friends. Saria has just shared nuggets, and this conversation, it is so needed, so relevant, and I'm so glad that we were able to have this conversation. And I'm so glad, friends, that you were able to tune in to this episode and how. So the takeaway from this conversation is to be empowerment, how you want to be empowered, be in the driver's seat, be in control of your finances, of money management, how important that is to you as a woman, to you and your family, so that you know what is happening and how you can better take care of your finances. So, friends, thank you so much for tuning in. Stay tuned with the next episode and subscribe to our channel. And Saria, before we let you go, where can people find you? How can people get in touch with you and connect with you?
Yeah, I love that. So you can find me on Instagram. It's one of my favorite places to hang out. Saria Financial, Saria Financial. Send me a message and say you found me from Alka's podcast, and I'll give you something super special. But yeah, find me there, and I'd love to connect with you.
Wonderful, amazing guys. Well, give a huge round of love to Saria Rino. Amazing. She is such a fabulous, phenomenal woman. I've known her for a while now, and she's just doing, just taking those quantum leaps as to what she's doing, especially in the financial industry. So connect with Saria. Saria, thank you. And stay tuned for more episodes and more phenomenal guests, and subscribe to our channel. And I look forward to connecting with you all very soon. Bye for now.